I'm just going to talk you through the practice framework that's used by child safety in Queensland a little bit now, and why, and that might be important to know. So the purpose of the framework is to really understand how child safety works, or how people do what they do in child safety. It allows us to understand how they work internally together, with each other, with stakeholders, with families, and it should also provide some consistency there. It gives explanation of the policies and procedures that people use in enhancing safety for young people and children. And yeah, it's meant to be collaborative throughout the organisation and consistent. So the factors that are considered a part of this framework are here. So they're really interesting, the terminology here. So the framework should guide daily practice for people, but look at this language here: enhance practice and organisational effectiveness. So not really social work language there. We're talking about, what is effective? Is that a costly or cheaper practice? Is that effective for who? For the child, for the family? Lots of questions there. The framework is meant to help people make decisions, inform their development, and articulate to everybody else what they're doing. Okay, so there is a national framework for child safety, and as you can see here, that is up to this year basically. It's meant to be a long-term approach so that all the different states and territories are sort of working together, looking at the framework and working consistently. That's really difficult because different states have got different issues. So the needs of people in the Northern Territory might be very different from the needs of people in, say, Melbourne. So, it's kind of tricky to probably have a framework that is used nationally, even though it could be a good idea in some ways. So the framework for practice, this really came and was developed after there was a commission of inquiry. There's been so many commissions and inquiries into child safety in Queensland, it's quite ridiculous. So it's meant to be on best practice, based on best practice, and developed through focus groups in Queensland, and brand spanking new, and develops on other things. So there's this idea of safety, of belonging, of well-being. Let's have a look at it in the next slide here. Okay, so we're meant to value the family and their connection, their participation. There's mention of culture. Normally in this class we would talk a lot about child safety and Indigenous families, but we unfortunately don't have the time at this stage. We would look at focus on safety, belonging, well-being, collaboration, listening to children's and families' views, planning with them. This is all sounding pretty good, right? This is kind of how we want to be working. It's meant to be rigorous, hopeful, strengths-based. You're meant to critically reflect all of these kinds of things. Now, we know in practice not all of these principles happen in child safety or in a lot of areas of social work for that matter. The knowledge is meant to be research and evidence-based, also based on our experience as practitioners. We're meant to look at these very traditional establishment social work ideas, skills and engagement, ability to assess, plan, and build a process, so goal setting or whatnot there. And the idea is that children and families are involved in these processes the whole way along. We need to be realistic that a lot of people have huge caseloads in child safety, so they might be working with, say if you're working with 30 families, which some social workers are, and there's several children in each family, that could be 280 children, which you're meant to have some responsibility over. So we just need to be a bit mindful that when people are working with these huge caseloads, that operating under this framework is probably not possible. Okay, so we're almost setting people up to fail in delivering their work in child safety using this framework if they, of course, have got these huge caseloads. We had something called the Carmody Inquiry several years ago in Queensland, and that looked at the state of child protection. And it's important because it says that placing kids with the state should be the last resort, and that everybody takes responsibility for the outcomes of children. So in a way, it takes a bit of the pressure off the Department of Child Safety. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. Next, we're going to talk about decision making and child protection, which is a very interesting area.